Welcome to this episode of the Xavier Files as a part of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast, and we are chatting with the voice of X-Men 97's Morph, JP Karliak. I'm JC.
And I'm Rod.
I really should change our intro so I like when I say the guest name, they can actually say things. So yeah.
We were excited to have JP here today, who's voicing arguably one of the biggest favorites from the original series and coming back bigger and badder than ever. So JP, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm JP Karliak, the voice of Morph. Voice actor, queer activist, snappy dresser. That's the brand. I've been voice acting predominantly in animation for about 18 years.
Wow.
I've played such characters as the Boss Baby, the Tin Man, Wile E. Coyote, Willy Wonka, Green Goblin, and a whole bunch of Marvel characters as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. And we're going to get into that. We're just going to hit some of our housekeeping stuff really quick. For those of you finding us for the first time, Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast. We're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode that we can find. All started with the original 1992 X-Men the Animated Series, and then led up to the release of JP's appearance in X-Men 97. We're just going to be talking with JP about his character, the biggest moments of Season 1. There are going to be spoilers from Season 1. If you don't want to spoil it for you, make sure to pause the podcast, watch the episodes, which you probably should have done at this point already, and come back. And we are not going to be asking about anything JP knows about Season 2. We're not trying to get a scoop. We want to actually get to know JP and the work that he's done. So.
And don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, make sure to follow us on all your favorite podcast services, which I am still not aware of, like everywhere we're at, because there's so many. Anyway, let's get into it.
So, JP, we started touching on some of those other roles that you had. Before we get into those, let's talk about what was the early career like? What was auditioning like? Because you said you've been doing this for almost 20 years. How was the industry different back then when you got started?
Well, we recorded on a reel-to-reel. I mean, my original demo was on a CD, so that's a start. It was so different. I think one of the biggest things, and so much of this is the recent developments out of the pandemic, but it was a much more not collaborative, because we still collaborate, but you were with so many more people. Mm-hmm. The idea of recording a show all together in one room wasn't foreign. It happened a lot. The Wizard of Oz show that I did, we recorded every episode as an ensemble of 12 every week, and it was nuts. It was so much fun. And I miss that. I miss that part of it. Even Boss Baby was, it wasn't always the whole cast, but it was at least 2 or 3 of us in combinations that we just got to play off each other and make jokes, and that was really, really, really fun. Which I think it's something I miss, but I think it's also a testament to when you watch something like X-Men 97 and you feel those relationships and so much of that stuff crackling. There's only a few exceptions where we actually recorded together. I mean, Magneto and Xavier, I think, recorded together for some of their scenes. Rogue and Gambit, the romance people. But I never met Cal. Never met him. Had no idea, until I met him at the premiere.
I was going to ask, when was the first time you got to meet Cal?
Yeah, I mean, most of the cast. I didn't. Yeah. Certainly none of the original cast until the premiere. Mm-hmm. And even then, I didn't meet Allison Seeley Smith until like a month later, or several months later. Yeah, some of the new cast I already knew, or was tangentially familiar with, but I might not have even known that they played I was like, oh my god, that's you! Oh my god, that's crazy! It was all just such a mystery. Recording from this is my booth back here, just recording in that little room. It's all just a strange little thing. So yeah, starting out auditioning, you know, sometimes I'd go in studio, sometimes I'd do it from my agent's office, seeing people in person, seeing my agent all the time, getting to chit chat with everybody in the industry, you know, when you're just sitting in the waiting room or at events and stuff like that. It's harder. And I will say, as somebody who runs a voiceover training program, advising students now as to like how to get into the industry is such an odd question for me. I often defer to other people who are doing well and starting out because I'm like, I have no idea. I mean, TikTok, like, it's so because I'm so used to. Oh, I'm just going to go to there's a happy hour that's on every Thursday. I'm going to go to that. We'll chick, you know, and yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, so it's a very different game.
So what was the first big audition you had that you can remember?
Big audition.
Yeah. And it could be the one that you landed, but what's the first one that stands out to you?
I mean, it's probably Wile E. Coyote. Mm-hmm. That was because that one I had an audition. I distinctly remember what I did in the audition. I remember the callback. I remember how all of it went. So, yeah, they were doing a new Looney Tunes series. Wile spoke, which is not something that often happens for that character, which was great because while they were looking for exact sound-alike matches for Bugs Bunny and, you know, Foghorn Leghorn and the people that, you know, are drilled into our brains, it was a little more loosey-goosey with how Wile E was supposed to sound, but he was just supposed to be very erudite, you know. So I got to really put my own spin on it. And the show at the time when it first started out, the voice director was Charlie Adler, and he was casting it. And Charlie, he was one of the voices of the original Buster Bunny on Tiny Toons. He was a voice of Starscream. He was.
That's where I recognize the name from.
Yeah, as soon as you've seen Cow and Chicken, like he is Cow and Chicken and the big red guy. He is a Looney Tune. He is like so. While I would never tell my students usually to like play into what you think the casting director wants, this was one of those cases where I knew Charlie, I knew his sense of humor, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do a show for Charlie because I love that wacko, sick sense of humor. You know, like I could so get in line with that. So I just went big, you know, and it landed. He was, you know, my Wile E. Coyote is a megalomaniac. He is out of his mind, and it landed. I booked it. It was a wild couple of years recording that show.
When did that show go live?
That was 2014, 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, a decade ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah.
One of the things, obviously, you know, we did our research and we're looking up some of your roles, and we found out you do one of our good friends' favorite TV roles, not tied to X-Men 97.
Oh, the Boss Baby? Yeah. My friend Scott from NerdSync, like he hasn't. I have to be honest, I haven't had time to like go through everything I'm supposed to watch, including Boss Baby. But Scott has told me, he's like, you just gotta watch it. It is so bizarre.
It's so weird.
Yeah, and he was even saying, like, I'm not even saying like in a bad way or anything. You just have to watch it. And also another connect, like my friend Ben actually composes music for the show. And so, like, I have, like, you know Ben Brumfield? Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah. So we I have so many, like, reasons I need to watch. I just, like, never have. And I saw you were on here. I was like, oh, hey, that's another show I'm supposed to watch.
I mean, one of the biggest compliments for me was I'm friends with Gray Drake, who was the former senior editor of Rotten Tomatoes. She's on a lot of TV shows doing movie reviews and stuff like that, red carpets and everything. She's the one with the pink hair. If you see the one with the pink hair, it's her. Anyway, I implicitly trust her taste in movies and film and stuff like that. I don't always agree, but I know if she that I might not like it, but if she says it's good, it is good. You know. And she was like, "Man, I got to tell you, that Boss Baby movie and the TV show, I'm addicted. I'm addicted to that." And I'm like, "Really?" You know, like, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. It's great. Like, I think the writing is actually hilarious. But when I hear about adults that are like, "Oh yeah, I don't have children. I just watch it."
Yeah.
Because I mean, as I tell people, I'm like, look, if you're looking for a show that's aimed at toddlers that is written like Glengarry Glen Ross, I mean, go to town.
I mean, I guess even the concept is pretty hilarious, right?
It's a baby in a suit.
Yeah.
Who runs a business?
Yeah. Capitalism at infancy.
I mean, it is. It's like, I consider myself a touch of a socialist. Canceled. But doing somebody that is so tied to capitalism, it's crazy. It is. It definitely it scratches a certain itch in some way. I don't know why.
That must be fun to be able to like kind of step into like other roles. I'm not an actor at all, and so like I'm just, even when I'm supposed to be acting on stuff in social media, there's some version of this that's happening.
Sure. Yeah,
so whenever I see like talented friends be like, oh, you get to be this, and then you get to be this, and it's like, oh, I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah, I mean, it all scratches certain itches of your personality. Like one of the, sometimes I get asked like, who is your favorite character to do, and they're all my babies. Like I have different reasons for all of them. But like the character I did from Trolls, I played this character Dante Crescendo, this adorable pink bouffanted, like powdered wig troll that flew around. And he just has the most delightful little voice. And like, I could be in the absolute worst mood going into doing a session, and then there's no way I could come out of a session doing that and feel bad. Like, he was just cotton candy.
Yeah, and you're having a bad day, but Dante's not.
No, never. There is no troll that's ever having a bad day. They might just be having a dull moment.
Yeah.
And then, JP, some of the other roles that stood out to me, you've done a massive amount of video game work.
It's funny you say that. I always think that I've done so much more animation, but yeah, I guess I've done a bit.
I mean, I'm also not as into the voice acting scene, so maybe from a ratio perspective, but you're also in a ton of video games. You've done some iconic roles in them. I think at one point you even played Hawkeye, which secretly is my favorite character across everything ever.
So Hawkeye was actually an animated project.
Mm-hmm. That was the anime one. Yeah.
Yeah, the most random, there was this show, Marvel Rising, that had like Squirrel Girl and Miss Marvel and stuff like that. And they did a motion comic YouTube series called Marvel Rising something. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was in that.
Right.
That's where I played Loki and Hawkeye. But I was like, whatever, I got to do it. That counts.
Yeah, because you've had a lot of Marvel characters too, like recently with Green Goblin, aside from all the X-Men stuff. So do you think you're one of the ones who's done the most different Marvel characters? Because it feels like each project you're doing a different character in those,
Maybe?
No.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've played the character that I think I've played the most has been Jarvis. Mm-hmm. Jarvis / Vision. I played him a couple times. I played Wiccan twice.
Yep.
But yeah, I think you're right. Everything else has been just repeats. It really all started. So my second animation gig was Marvel Mashups, which was this interstitial show on Disney XD that was kind of like Space Ghost Coast to Coast, where they would take old Marvel cartoons, cut them up different ways, redub them, and they would just be silly and stupid. And they cast me as Jarvis in that originally. But then I was also I played the Wizard. I played, and then just ancillary random characters. I was Hawkeye in that actually as well. And I was the Scarlet Witch. And I was Black Cat.
Yeah.
Which,
it's awesome.
Sure.
Yeah. But you've also played the other side where recently you were the Joker.
I was.
And obviously of a lot of characters, Joker has a lot of famous association for his voice. So what's it like stepping into a role like that?
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a character. I think of him as a field of landmines of incredible performances, and if you get too close to any one of them, a fan base will explode in your face. I think some saving graces in there were that this is an Elseworlds Joker. He was I wasn't doing any one particular Joker that's been done before. I was kind of doing my own. There was that sort of wonderfully meta thing about I was coming into a world as a different Joker from Mark Hamill's Joker, who existed in that world but was now dead. So there was kind of that odd thing of like, I'm trying to find my Joker while at the same time this Joker is trying to figure out what Joker he wants to be based upon that. You know what I mean? It's a lot of, it's very meta.
Multiverse, man.
Yeah. And it was fun. Like the funny thing is that a lot of the time this happened with Joker, this happened with Morph, this happened with Willy Wonka, is I'll be asked to play a legacy character, and it will be a sound-alike, but they don't want it to be a true sound-alike of any particular version. And my go-to response is just to inject more of my natural speaking voice into it. Like, as I'm sure you've noticed, this is Morph. Morph sounds like this. My Joker is kind of a little bit of Hamill and a little bit of Ledger, but it wrapped around this voice. And the same is true. Like Willy Wonka, I did it, while Gene Wilder was still alive, and they didn't want to get sued. So they were like, make it sound a little less like him. And I'm like, so a little more like me. Okay.
It's that slider.
Yeah, really. It is. Yeah, it is.
So before we dive deep into the X-Men stuff, would love to hear more about what you're doing with Queer Vox and as the founder and president of the organization, and what that project has been like for you.
Yeah. Queer Vox, I started in 2021 as a response to some conversations I'd had with casting friends, where we were simultaneously celebrating the increase in queer characters in animation and video games, while also bemoaning the fact that they were rarely, if ever, authentically cast. And the common refrain was like, well, I just don't know where to find them. And it's like, well, these queer actors exist. Yeah. We know that
let's get rid of that excuse for you. And
let me help you find them. So it started out as a class, then it became an online Discord community. We have an online talent directory that's used by everybody from Lucasfilm to Random House to Insomniac Games. And we also do diversity work with the industry to show them, why authentic and diverse casting is important, but also to show them how. Because it can be, for people who it's not always on the brain, it can be a little bit confusing to get it right. So, yeah.
Got it. And if anybody wants to get involved with that, go to the website. Is that the best way to find out more?
Yeah. Queervox.org, or you can visit us on Instagram or X at Queervox Academy.
And I also should mention, going on X, you're very brave.
Yeah. Well, I have an assistant that does it for me.
There you go.
Perfect. Yeah, I can. I should also mention there is a second nonprofit that I am a part of. I co-founded this with my voiceover pal Courtney Taylor, who plays Callisto on X-Men, I might add. And it is Nerds Vote, which is our nonpartisan voter organization getting comic book readers, cosplayers, con-goers, and pop culture fans of all kinds, aka nerds, voting. And people might know that we have a little tiny election coming up in November, and it'd be great if you got out and vote. So visit nerdsvote.com to make sure that you are registered and that your address is up to date, because they be throwing people off voting rolls like left and right. So make sure you are registered.
And how long has that organization been around?
2017.
Have I seen it at things like LA Comic-Con or San Diego in the past? Because the logo looks super familiar. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, we sell merch. We got T-shirts and patches and everything, Yep.
All right. Well, let's dive into X-Men as a whole. How long have you been a fan of the X-Men in general, early X-Men memories, things of that nature?
Sure. I am the shameful one who did not watch the original series when it originally debuted. I would come home from school and I would turn on the TV and I would see the end credits of X-Men as the Power Rangers was starting, which was my baby. I loved me some Power Rangers. But I loved the movies. I mean, from the jump, the first X-Men movie and on, I was hooked. And as the years went on and we got the advent of Wikipedia and YouTube, I would find myself picking up on Easter eggs and going down deep dives and trying to figure out, well, wait, who is that? Tell me more about that. I want to know all the things. So my fandom and my knowledge of the lore really came from just the back end of looking up all of the stuff that I saw. I'm huge on recap videos. Like, I watch the crap out of them. Yeah, and then once this audition came around is when I actually watched the animated series. I'm like, oh, okay, I see why. I get it now. Yeah.
So you have to go through the childhood trauma of watching Morph die in episode 1. Like,
no.
I think that was a canon event for all of us when we were 10. like we're just like, it's Saturday morning, no school. Let's eat waffles and then like watch someone die.
Right. I will say, I knew that it happened before I sat down to watch it. I didn't know it happened right at the jump. I was like, oh, geez.
Yeah,
wow,
and then
that's crappy.
And then they became like the favorite, and because of like 90s animation, they're like, well, crap, it's gonna take another year and a half, and we're gonna bring this character back.
Oops.
So you go into the audition. Did you know you were auditioning for Morph, or were you brought in as a general for multiple role kind of scenario?
No, definitely knew. The sides were coded. I think it was like Steve or Bob or Bill or something like that, Mm-hmm. But I did have an inkling reading, the script that I think I know what this is. So I called up Meredith, who was the casting director and voice director, and was like, "Is this what I think it is?" Yes. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. And also, I knew that Morph was from the jump was non-binary, so I already had sort of a window into what to expect from this character and where they were going with it. Yeah. But as far as walking into the audition, again, it was in the booth. We started this during like middle of the pandemic, so yeah, it was all just super removed. Everything was over Zoom. But I did the audition. I sent it off and was just sort of forgot about it until I think I heard about it maybe 2 months later. It's like, oh, cool. Look that. Nice.
And then as you're going through and you're doing the read and stuff, did you have the impression that Morph was going to be, I don't want to say more serious, because Morph is never a super serious character in a lot of ways, but it felt like there was a tone down on some of that like 90s slapstick. Like it felt less Looney Tune in certain aspects.
Yeah, and I think that's partly why I went more with my natural speaking voice as opposed to trying to play something up. There wasn't as much of a mandate that it had to sound like what Ron Rubin did, except for the laugh. The laugh was kind of a thing. I could tell that there was a sensitivity going on there, and also just playing a queer character who has experienced so much trauma and plays through it with humor. I mean,
right.
Ain't that relatable? So,
and had a mask during the 90s.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah. So, it was fairly a no-brainer to just use what I already had, and also the show is so bombastic. There's so many thousands of things going on every episode. Plus, Morph is changing into all of these different characters. I was like, I do less. I can do less. I can just let the words and everything kind of speak for themselves, and it works.
So obviously, tons of talk about Morph when people found out he was going to be on the roster and stuff. Do you have any stories you want to share from the reception of the community? Before the premiere, meeting people at conventions, things of that nature. Yeah.
Honestly, the premiere was the first real taste of it, because we didn't do conventions or anything, because they really didn't announce who was playing who. Mm-hmm. Like I was in the cast, but nobody said who was doing what. So we really weren't doing cons until after the premiere, and then it was sort of full tilt.
Right, because that went right into WonderCon right after.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And also, I don't think any of us knew how good it was. Like, I think all of us had fairly high expectations because the original was so beloved. But I think we all knew from the scripts that it was written very well. And from what we had seen in the few little bits of ADR that we might have done, we were like, well, the animation looks good. So, the elements were there. But as far as like sitting down and seeing something that's like, okay, this really hums.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody, including the original cast, us, like, we did not expect it to be what it was, and the reaction was a pleasant and wonderful surprise. Yeah, like being at WonderCon and just the room jammed was so cool. It was, and I mean, I don't even think that prepared us for when we did the panel at San Diego Comic-Con months later, and that room was jammed, and that was like 4 times as big, and it was just...
Yeah, the WonderCon panel, because I was in the crowd for that one, it was loud. Like, that's the best way I could describe it. Like, when you all walked onto the stage, like, that crowd was screaming at the top of their lungs. And I think we'd only seen the first 2, maybe 3 episodes at that point, but it was fresh. Like,
yeah, probably 2 actually, because yeah, and also as far as the particular response, you know, there was that delightful blowback that was coming out, you know, as we were leading up to the premiere, and I didn't take it personally. I'm a big believer that all press is good press, you know, so whatever. And it wasn't, but I wasn't sure if the impact of Morph would be able to kind of push through that, or if it would just be sort of like, you know, Morph is the character we don't like to talk about because of all of the you know, woke Nazis that come after us about, you know, BS. But it was so positive and wonderful, especially after that WonderCon panel, to meet so many fans who were so impacted by just the sheer presence of Morph. And it really is just presence, because it's not, we never say it, we never talk about it. I think there's only one instance where we actually use Morph's pronouns.
Yeah, I think Rogue says it, right?
Yeah, and a later episode, you know. So it was just the fact that Morph exists. And I think it needs to be stated, though, that it works not just because Disney played lip service and just were like, that's a non-binary character. It was because the character is written by queer people, was played by a queer person. There's just so much that's baked into them that it's just an unspoken, you just know. In the same way that, like, if you saw Black Panther, you just know. You know, there's just that intrinsic authenticity that whether you're in the community or out of it, you can pick up on it. Like, it's just like, it's little things. It's just such little microscopic things.
Yeah, when that news first came out before the series started, like, I remember me and at least our group of friends was like, oh yeah, that checks. Like I think we all kind of like guessed back before, you know, in the 90s, the original version, even if it wasn't like explicitly written. But, and I mean, I don't want to speak to this specific character or anything, but I know, like, when I see like Asian American characters in sci-fi specifically, like you said, existence is often enough, because whenever you hear, like you said, some of like the people who are arguing against like woke stuff or whatever, they're like, why does this character have to be Asian or black or queer or whatever? It's like, so you're saying you would rather see dragons in your fantasy world than someone that looks like me, a group of my experiences. And like in this world where people can fly and travel through time and go to multiverses and stuff, like, you know, like an Asian woman piloting a Star Wars plane is unbelievable for you for some reason, you know, like.
Yes. But midi-chlorians are fine.
Right.
JP, that was the most painful thing I'm going to hear tonight.
I didn't mean to bring Star Wars into this.
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciated how you portrayed the character, because, and I think I've heard you mention this in like another interview that I read or something. It was like the term non-binary wasn't even discussed when the era of the show takes place.
Nope.
So it didn't need to be explicitly said, but just how the portrayal happened and how the writing was happening, I thought was awesome.
And I think that's what makes it so much more personal for me, in that this is a character who's going on a gender journey, does not yet have the terminology really to describe it yet. In the 90s. I'm like, yeah, me, cool.
So, going through the whole season, is there that wow, this is the coolest moment that you got to have with your character? Like, what is the moment you're like, hell yeah, I got to do this?
Okay, well, if we're talking hell yeah moments, I mean,
Please.
Hulk, it's Morph Smash! Like, it's like, yeah! I mean, it's on so many levels.
Yeah.
Like, iconic. It's also, F the people that are, giving me crap about the masculinity of the character, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, take that, you know? Or the power strength that a queer character can have. Like, it's such a literal smackdown.
And then you had also done at one point, forgive me if I'm getting it wrong, because I don't have the page pulled up in front of me. You did Doc Samson in a Hulk cartoon.
Sure did.
Yeah. So you got to go from the sidekick to I got to be the Hulk.
Yeah. And also, it was a very erudite. I play a common thread of characters that I play is that they think they went to a good college, and yeah. And my Doc Samson was kind of based on like Fraser Crane, like just he was supposed to be Scar's psychologist. There was never a fight scene. He was always in a suit. Like, it was. Not exactly. Yeah. So yeah, this was a step forward in the Hulkverse.
Right.
Our funny story in this podcast about that is like I don't know a whole lot about the actual comic book universe. I enjoy the cartoons and I enjoyed the toys when I was a kid. So I always just say dumb crap on the top of my head. And like roughly half the time it happens. So on this very podcast, in like an early episode or in the middle of the season, I was
like episode 4 or 5.
Yeah, I was like,
or 4 because 5 was crazy.
Yeah, because I had hit I had hit some other things that shouldn't have happened that I just said. So I was like, okay, what's the dumbest prediction I can make? In the finale, Morph does a Hulk smash.
And I said definitively, like, there is no way. And then
I didn't even expect it though. I was trying to like shoot for something.
Wish you put money on that.
Right.
no, I won't bet against him because he was literally the one who said, "Oh yeah, Kamala Khan is a mutant." I'm like, she's an Inhuman. Like, and he does this, and it kills me.
It's because I don't have like the knowledge that's jading me, Yeah. It's like I wasn't familiar with Ms. Marvel, so when the show was running, I was like, anything could happen. She could be a mutant, and everybody was like, "No, she's an Inhuman." That's what.
Except the Inhumans did not do well on ABC. So.
No,
I went to that premiere at IMAX, so I got to see that reaction in real time.
All right, so that was the hell yeah moment. Let's go. What was there the other favorite moment that might not just be like the yell at the screen moment?
I've got a few. I mean, I think
Please.
I really love the when Morph changes into Jean Grey and is sort of razzing Wolverine, but I think it comes from a place of love where it's just like, buddy, you are barking up a tree of trauma. Leave her alone. I really like that. I really like when they're going to find Boliver Tras and it's the secret door with the Diet Coke machine, and he's like secret lair behind a vending machine. Well done, bad guy. Well done. It's just such a fun. I just love his sense of humor. So, yeah, I think, and also like this really lovely, sensitive moment of telling Wolverine through Jean Grey that he is loved is
right.
Is obviously very sweet.
Such a masterfully done moment because like we know, but also if that really rubs you the wrong way, you can interpret it.
I mean, for me, it's sort of like it's that push pull of on one hand, look, if Morph loves Wolverine, it's his business, but there's also the trope of a queer character pining after a straight character to no avail. That is very 90s. But I'd like to see better from Morph. I'd like to, if they are truly in love with their bestie, that they come to their senses and they maybe, as I continually advocate for, find some icy Bobby Drake ass.
There you go. I'm also not completely convinced Wolverine is completely straight. Someone who's lived that long.
I mean, in the context of the comics, I fully agree with you. In the context of being a cartoon that Disney puts out, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, when he's like the X-Men.
Yeah, like the one that everybody's a fan of. Like, nah.
Yeah. Although I've made dumber predictions, maybe that could be the will to the universe.
From your lips.
Yeah.
From your lips to the mouse ears.
I also did love how, we have this character that is able to interject levity and stuff like that. But during the Boliver Tras moments, there's like and I don't want to say your line for you, but when Morph literally says, "Is this who we are now?" Like that hit. I think it hit so hard because it was Morph who actually said it and delivered it.
Yeah. Well, and on a few levels. I mean, yeah, he's the comic relief and everything, but this was also, he's the member of the team who's been murdered.
Multiple times.
Yeah. So, yeah, there is that life and death consequence that's on his brain. Yeah, so you're right. It's definitely an impactful moment.
So, got a question of what you would like to see. This is not asking for anything that you have recorded or have seen so far for season 2. Is there an X-Men story that has not happened in the show yet that you would be excited for?
Bobby Drake, hello. I mean, for me, I think a lot of it is seeing Morph step out from the comic relief / romantic foil to romantic third wheel to Wolverine.
Right.
And just having their own mission, their own plot line, whether it be romantic or action or whatever, like just, something that really is their own and does not tie them necessarily to somebody else. But as far as specifics, like I'd love for them to meet Mystique at some point, just to sort of have that, like, wait, do you do it this way? No, but do you do it this way? Oh, interesting. Like, the comparing of notes.
Yeah, shapeshifters in front of each other, like, yeah.
Although more than likely we would just duke it out,
Probably.
And they both be very judgmental with each other.
Of course.
It's also like
entirely.
That's like both their personalities is different judgmental.
Yeah. Catty, nasty, judgy.
Have you ever read any of the Exiles books where Morph was a massive part of that series?
Oh, no, I'm thinking of Age of Apocalypse. Morph.
So there was Age of Apocalypse, and then there was the Exiles books, was just them jumping from alternate realities, essentially trying to save timelines kind of scenario. And that is because obviously growing up, watched X-Men 92, and then when I got back into comics in 2005, I started picking up those trades. And Morph was just a full-on hero in those and has some great emotional moments. So maybe give those a check for what that's worth.
No, I probably should.
All right.
Character research.
So I have my standard 2 last questions. But before I go to those, Rod, do you have any others that you'd like to ask JP?
No, I think they just kind of folded into our discussion so far about just, asking, this is something I do kind of ask different people. Like, I asked something similar to David. Like, you jump in and out of characters. I know you were kind of touched on this, that everything has like a core of you in it. But like, is that something you trained for, to like jump in and out of characters, just kind of like involuntarily or seemingly involuntarily, or is just you've been like that since you came out of the womb?
Well, I think that my common response has been when people ask, where do your voices come from? My answer is childhood trauma.
Yeah, relatable.
And yeah, I mean, as a queer kid, so much of it, a adopted queer only child, let's be clear, whose whole mission in life was people pleasing. Like, please love me. So yeah, I mean, just constant code switching. Being more masculine, being less, being more, just having more of my natural Scranton accent, having less of it, like all of those different things I also have the nasty habit of if I sit down with somebody who has like a British accent or I will start doing it, not intentionally, and I'll be like, or I was just at Dragon Con and the guy assisting me was from Atlanta. And I was sitting next to him all weekend, and I was just like, "Oh yeah, girl, could you go get that? Oh, that'd be wonderful." And he was like, "You need to stop."
Are you mocking me?
Like, no, I don't mean it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so much of it does come from that code switching, and also I was big into like I had stuffed animals, and I was creating characters by myself. I didn't have a ton of friends growing up, so I was playing make believe a lot. And just creating all of these voices. And it just kind of became like being a mimic, being able to pick up on things, like being able to hear what somebody else was doing and pulling it in and analyzing how they're doing it. It kind of became a second nature thing that I've only had to lately reverse engineer when I'm trying to teach it.
Oh. That is something I've heard a lot, because I'm not a great teacher, but I hear like if you want to get better at what you do, teach, because then you have to figure out what you've been doing. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, and honestly, a lot of it came from I took the most useful class I probably took in college wasn't even an acting class. It was a general education science course in phonology, which was all about like your vocal tract and how you produce sound.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so once I could diagram and look at like how do all of the different moving things like an instrument works, I'm like, oh well. There you go. That's how it happens.
Yeah, I went to school for music, so during like vocal times, we have to do something similar. We didn't get to go that far. I wish we would have, but we had to do things with my vocal coach, which I don't think this is allowed anymore. Would like physically like manipulate your body to get you to do certain things and stuff to sing.
I think they do, but I think they have to ask you now. You have to sign all manner of consent.
Yeah, there was no asking. I remember being like on the floor with my like vocal professor, like putting his foot on my stomach and like breathe, diaphragm,
Oh yeah, no.
So before we get to the final question, do you think we could get a Cyclops is waiting for me in the voice of Morph?
Cyclops is waiting for me. Gotta go run. Bye.
That's amazing.
Oh, I'm definitely going to share that with Catherine when I see her at LA Comic-Con. So to take it from that, which is amazing, to a little bit more of a serious question. If somebody was introduced to X-Men 97 and your portrayal of Morph for the first time, no baggage, no preconceived notions about the character, what would you want them to take away from Morph?
Oh wow, this feels so benign, but it's actually kind of the truth. That he's cool. Yep. And it doesn't say, it sounds like a glib answer, but it so much of it has to do with representation in the sense that when an average, whether it's an adult or a kid, turns on a show and sees a queer character and they don't necessarily perceive, it's not about them perceiving like, oh, they are this or they are that or whatever. It's just them being like, I like them. They're cool. They're my Halloween costume. Mm-hmm. Mission accomplished.
And they don't belong in the X-Men. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, there was that, not to go back to Black Panther, but I'm going to, that moment after that movie came out when there were all these white kids that wanted to get the Black Panther Halloween costume. And it's like, on one hand, I mean, I love that for you. Right. And I love that you feel that way. On the other hand, no. But like, I'm so glad that you have admiration there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There was the one white guy in Black Panther. You can be him.
Yeah. I mean, it's also a cheaper costume. Just get a suit from Burlington Coat Factory. You're done.
Right.
So, JP, thank you so much for joining us. Right after this episode comes out, you're going to be at New York Comic Con.
I will be, yes. I'll be there from Friday through Sunday, along with Unknown Comics and a whole slew of the cast. I think maybe the largest collection of us that has been assembled thus far in New York. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw Chris Potter is there, who's the only one of that entire group that I haven't met yet still, so...
Actually, I don't. Oh, I met him for a grand total of 15 seconds at the premiere.
Awesome.
Yeah, like, hi, that was it.
Well, again, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. I'm sure everybody loved getting to hear from you. And to close us out, if you guys have any thoughts, make sure you drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload or the official Instagram post about this episode. And if you like what you heard, we appreciate a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts. And then, JP, we are trying to become #1 on CastBox because not a lot of people are on it, so it can't be that hard.
I was going to say, the what?